Hi everyone, my name is Alan. I'm currently working as a business analyst in a global technology company called Salesforce, based in Melbourne, Australia. But 2 years ago, I was in a totally different position. I was working for a consumer goods company back in China. The consumer goods company is a global confectionery company called Mars. And when I was, a lot of you might not have heard of Mars, but you must be familiar with the brands such as Snickers, M&M's, Double Mints, and Extra. All these brands belong to Mars. So when I was working for them, I was given a very interesting task. That task is to explore the Chinese biscuit market and see if there's an opportunity for Mars China to enter. Since this research was done 2 years ago, and Mars China has already decided not to enter into this market, this topic is no longer a sensitive issue, and that is why I can share with you, and that is why I can share with the audience here, Andrew and Andrea. This topic actually came out when I was having a conversation with you two, and when I was telling you about my working experience in China. And so today's actually and since you guys are very interested in the biscuit market in China, so that is why I'm giving you a brief presentation of what I have found and what we recommended in the end. Any questions? No? Okay, cool. Let's begin. Stop me if you have any questions, okay? Cool. So today we're going to cover three major points. First, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what the Chinese biscuit market looks like. Next, I'm going to talk about the analysis I did of whether to enter into the Chinese market. And lastly, I'm going to give you the recommendation. Cool. First, let's talk about how big the biscuit market is. So usually when I was working for a confectionery company, because we know the confectionery market so well, we will usually benchmark all the other markets with the market that we are currently in. So that's why, as you can see from the graph here, that biscuit market is twice as big as chocolate market. It generates around 20.6 billion revenue per year in China. And that is a very big market. Although it's a very big market, it's also a very slow growing market. It's very stable. As you can see, in the last 4 years, when I was doing my research, its growth rate is averaging around 1% growth rate every year on average. But when you this means nothing until you compare it with chocolate market's growth rate. Chocolate market, as you can see from the graph here, it's much more volatile than the stable biscuit market. 1 year it can go up to 11% growth rate, and the next year it can decline by 9%. So compared to chocolate markets, biscuit market is very stable and very slow growing. Biscuit market is also evenly distributed across different channels. So as you can see from the graph here, let me give you a bit of a definition in terms of what we're discussing in terms of distribution channel. So CVS means convenience store, TT means traditional shop, traditional trade, that is mom and pop store. Mini is means mini supermarkets. Super usually means supermarkets such as Woolworths and Coles, and hyper usually means large supermarkets such as Costco, Walmart, and Sam's in China. So as you can see, in China, convenience store is still very small in terms of its market share, but biscuit is basically evenly distributed in all the other traditional channels. And this is very different from the rest of the consumer goods industry. So it's different from chocolate, it's different from confectionery in general, it's also different from consumer goods in general. FMCG means fast-moving consumer goods. So that we talk about how big this market is. We talk about how fast this market grows. We also talk about how this market is distributed. Next, we're going to talk about the competitive landscape of this market. So, this market, biscuit market, is very different compared to the chocolate market when it comes to competitive landscape. Chocolate market in China only has very few players. As you can see, the top three players consist of 80%, almost 80% of the market share in China. That is Mars, Ferrero, and Hershey's. Whereas when you're comparing, whereas when you look at the biscuit market, the top three players only consist of half of the market share. The major, so that means biscuit market in China is more fragmented and is more competitive in general. And also, the competitor we face are very different in China when we are, in terms of the chocolate market, they're mostly Western players. They are pretty much the competitors we have in other markets, such as Hershey, such as Ferrero. But when we're looking at the biscuit markets, we will see a totally different landscape. We do have the large global food and beverage companies such as Mondelez, Nestle, but we also have a lot of regional local players in this market that are doing very well. So that means it's the competitors' landscapes are very different in the biscuit market, and also the barriers for entry for biscuit is not very high. So let me give you a quick summary of the landscape. So as we can see, the biscuit market is big. It's twice as big as chocolates, but it's very stable. Its growth rate is very low. It's around 1%. And it's also very balanced across different channels. And lastly, it is also has a lot of strong regional players. Next, we go into the analysis. Sounds good? Cool. So, although when we are looking into the future, we can see that this seems to be a very promising market because it's big. We did like a rough estimate that if we can achieve 12% market share, we will be able to bring in 2.5 billion more revenue for Mars. But we also noticed that there are 4 major challenges that are stopping us from actually getting that market share. So first, it's a slow growing category. This means that the category that if we're ever entering into the Chinese biscuit market, it will not be growing very fast. Next, we do not have much knowledge in this industry. Although we do understand the chocolate market in China very well, we do not possess any capabilities in the biscuit market in Asia. Especially when we're next, we also have a lot of strong Asian and local competitors who have been in this market for ages. That will put us into a very inferior position in terms of the competitive landscape. And lastly, to enter into this biscuit market, we do need to invest in supply chain, which requires a large funding from the headquarters, which we don't currently possess. So in general, in conclusion, we do not recommend Mars to enter into the Chinese biscuit market, despite its huge potential. For 4 reasons. Let me rephrase. First, it's the slow-growing market. Second, we do not understand much about this market. Third, we have a lot of strong Asian local competitors, and which Mars is not familiar with. Lastly, we do not have the funding. And that concludes my presentation about the Chinese biscuit market.